These videos were created for you to watch along. They'll teach you about client track so you know what's going on. So best of luck with all of your data. Now here's your HMIS system administrator. In this video, we'll be going over basic data editing within ClientTrack. In this video, we'll learn how to edit the data that we have previously recorded in the system. This will help us if we have incorrectly recorded information and we need to go and change it, or maybe somehow during an intake there was some information that was missed. This will allow us to go in and add it. What this is not about is going in and making changes to pre-existing data because of a change in a client's situation. So what I mean by that is, for instance, if you did an intake a month ago and you recorded a client's income at a certain amount, and now you find out they've gotten a raise, you would not go in and edit a pre-existing financial assessment. You would do a new assessment, either an annual or program enrollment assessment, so that we can track the changes that a client might go through. So I just wanted to kind of get that out there of the purpose of data editing. So the first thing I want to cover is how to edit information that was recorded when you did a intake. So there's a feature that's pretty easy to get to called Edit Enrollment Workflow. You can get to it from the client's dashboard, and you just would click the blue action button beside the enrollment in question, and you'll see an option here that says Edit Enrollment Workflow. This is just going to work on current enrollments. So for instance, here we have an enrollment that already has an exit date where they've been exited, and you will not have this option. But for current enrollments, you will have this option, and I'm going to go ahead and click on Edit Enrollment Workflow. And what this is going to do is going to bring up all the forms that came up when you first did that intake. And so this will allow you then to make any changes as you go forward. So for instance, maybe the social was wrong. I can go ahead and change that here. Click Finish, and then it's going to go to the next form within the intake workflow. Maybe there is a child that has been born now that needs to be added to this enrollment. This is where I would be able to add a additional family members information on this form, the family members form, and then on the next form it would allow me to go ahead and enroll them or add them to the enrollment for this project. This would also allow me to change any family information here. This is where we could change vet status and so forth. We'll go ahead and hit save and close to continue on. So this is where if we had added any additional family members, they would all be listed here. And if we want to add them to the enrollment, we can just click the checkbox there. It will automatically default to today's date. So for instance, if this was someone that really should have been enrolled initially and I just forgot to add them, then I can make those dates match there. So we are now adding this child to this ongoing enrollment. This would also allow you to update housing move-in date. For instance, if this was a permanent housing project, you would have the housing move-in date right here. You could go ahead and add that here. We'll go ahead and click Save here. And as you can see from this list here, it's just going to go through all those initial assessments that you did when you did an intake, allowing you to easily update those. Now, for instance, in this scenario, I've added an additional family member, this child 1 right here. This was not originally part of the enrollment, so this child has never been assessed. So in this case, I would want to go ahead and continue on through this entire workflow till I get to the child assessment, so that way I can go ahead and capture the assessments for the child. But if I had not added that child, and maybe there's just one more thing on the intake I need to update, let's say this field needed to be corrected. Once I've made a change, all the changes I need to, I don't have to continue on in this workflow. At any point I can cancel the workflow, and any changes I've made on the forms previous are still going to be saved. So I can go ahead and cancel the workflow instead of having to go all the way through to the finish. This also works the same way for exit information. So for instance, on this client here, they've been exited on this date to this destination. Maybe that's incorrect. To update that, I can just go back to edit or exit the enrollment. And then this would allow me to go in, make any changes. And as you can see, this will continue on through all the exit workflow with all the different assessments, allowing me to update them. But if that was all I needed to update and I don't need to change any other data on this, I could go ahead and cancel out of the workflow as well. So that's how you can easily edit entry data and exit data on a client. Now sometimes you might need to get rid of an exit on a client. So let's say we accidentally exited this client, or maybe we exited them because we thought they were leaving the project and then we found out they are going to stay. If we need to get rid of an exit, we can simply click on this right here and we can do re-enter the enrollment. What that's going to do is it's going to get rid of that exit date, so it's like the client never exited. And we can see that reflected here. Now something you might run into if you're ever trying to do this on an exit date that happened more than 90 days ago. So here's a great example of that. They were exited a few months back. If I try to use this option, we're going to get an error message that says the enrollment was exited more than 90 days ago. It cannot be re-entered. And the reason they do that is as kind of a data quality check, because normally you would not be re-entering, you would not be getting rid of exit data that's that old. Because if the client did leave then and now they're back, you would do a new enrollment. You would not just get rid of this exit data. But, however, if for whatever reason you've got an old exit date there and you still need to get rid of it because maybe you just improperly recorded an exit when they never left, there is a little trick to that. And what you can do here is you can update, first you can update this exit date. So I'm going to do what I just did on the step previous, and I'm going to go in and update the exit date. And you can use any date within 90 days. So I'm just going to say they exited today. And then I can go ahead and cancel out of the workflow because I don't need to make any more changes. And then now what I could do, because we've updated that to today, now it will let me go ahead and re-enter the enrollment because it's not more than 90 days. And so that's how you can get past that little limitation there. Now, there's going to be some times where someone might already be exited from the program enrollment, but you might still need to edit the intake information. And so like we talked about earlier, we went through the edit enrollment workflow, but I also mentioned how that's not available when someone's already been exited. So another way to edit intake information is to use the review entry assessments option. This is going to get us to the same assessments that were done when we did an intake. This is just a different way of getting to them. And actually, once you get more familiar with the system and what assessments are required, this can be a quicker way to edit information, both for intake and both for exit. So for instance, I'm going to click on review entry assessment. We're going to then get a list of all the assessments that were done when we first did enrollment. Now, caveat about this page is it will show all possible assessments. So we have in quotations here certain project types, so we can see like, okay, well this is Hopwell only, we don't have to worry about that. This is path only. So there's no need to go in and say, oh, there's a bunch of these that are not checked. I need to go in and add information on that. But again, it will show you a list of all this stuff. But what this does is allow you to quickly go to a specific form and change the information. So if I needed to change the financial information for this client, I could just click here, the little notebook icon on financial, and then I could easily go in, change that information, click save and close, and it's going to be updated now. Instead of having to go through an entire edit enrollment workflow, I can go directly to the form I need to modify. A few common fields that people have a hard time locating is one is the disabling condition field, as well as the insurance field and client location field. Those are all under HMIS universal data. So if you click that, that's going to get you to those options where you can go ahead and update that like so. This also will allow you to change the edit assessments in the same way. So we learned how to change the edit, exit date and exit destination and go through the workflow again by using edit enrollment. But if there's just an individual exit assessment you need to update, you can also click review exit assessments. You can go straight to a specific assessment, and then you can go ahead and update the information like so. And so this can just be an easier way of editing your information. Also, something that you might run into with data quality cleanup is if you need to edit what's called the master assessment date. To edit the master assessment date, if you go to review entry assessments and go to the HMIS universal data page, you'll notice an option here. It says master assessment active, change assessment date. And if you click that, it's going to allow you to change that master assessment. So if you ever are told you need to change the master assessment date, that is going to be where you do that. And it is important that all these dates match up. So you would want the same date here as here, as well as the enrollment itself. When you do a normal project intake, all those numbers will match up, but the only way they'd be different is if you had manually changed them during an intake process. And so I just wanted to make sure you knew how to go in and change that information if you needed to. Another thing that would be common to change would be the case members. So as we know, every time we do an enrollment, we choose what case members we want to be in that project. So for people that have already exited, we can't go through the edit enrollment workflow, but what we can do is say view case members. This would list any members that are part of this enrollment, and we could go in and hit edit enrollment and change the entry date. We could change the relationship to head of household, that kind of thing. Some of the issues we've ran into because of some migrated data would be when all the household members are listed as self. So a way to correct that on enrollment would be to click view case members. If you see self on all of these, you could go in, edit enrollment workflow, and you could change that. And what you might end up having to do is actually change them all to initially to be not self. And so we would change it like that. If all these had been self, we would change them all to something other than self, and then we could go in and change the one that does need to be self to self. And so that's how we edit case members, like so. If you're familiar with annual assessments, if that's something that you are required to do or something you record in the system, you can edit those by clicking on the action button beside the enrollment and click update/annual assessment. And on this option here, it's going to do a little preview of the project enroll date. Then it's going to have an option, do you want to do a new assessment or update existing? So this is where you would be able to go in and update a pre-existing annual or during program enrollment assessment. So we can see there were 2 annual assessments that have been done. I could click on one of those, and then it's going to walk me through all those particular questions, allowing me to update them. And in the same way with the entry and exit, once we've made the changes we need to, we can go ahead and exit out. We don't have to continue on in the workflow. In rare occasions, we might need to just actually delete an enrollment. So this is not to be confused with exiting enrollment. But deleting enrollment, the only time we would do that is if the client was literally never should have been enrolled in a project, but somehow they accidentally have gotten enrolled in a project, and we just need to delete that. You can do that by clicking the blue action button, and there's an option that says delete enrollment. Something to note on that though is it deletes it just for this particular family member. So here we have 3 case members. If I click this button here and click delete the enrollment, now it's not going to show up for this family member, but if I switch over to the other family members, we're still going to see that enrollment. So what we need to do is go ahead and delete it from there, and then also to the child, delete it from here as well. And a lot of people forget to do that in the cases where they have to go delete an enrollment for somebody. One cool thing about ClientTrack is most things you delete are what's called a soft delete. So what that means is it is possible to pretty easily restore that if we deleted it by accident. So to restore an enrollment, if you click on enrollments, it's going to list your current enrollments and your exited ones, any enrollments that the client's ever had. But if you click on the recycle bin up here, you're going to get a list of any enrollments that have been deleted previously. So here we can see this enrollment right here is the one I deleted previously. The only reason it's listed twice here is because I was doing another training on this previously and they had another enrollment. But what you'll want to do is you can click the recycle bin here to restore it, and that's going to restore that enrollment back to the client. So we can see here now at least the child has enrollment back into this path street outreach, but then I would need to also go to the other family members and restore their enrollment as well. So just like how we had to go delete them individually, in the same way we would have to go restore them individually as well. And then as we restore those and then go back to the dashboard, now we can see there's 2 people. And then if we went to the spouse enrollments recycle bin, we could go ahead and restore that. And the system's automatically going to group those back as they were. So now we're back to where we were with an enrollment that all 3 household members are a part of. For services, you can edit services by clicking the little notepad icon here. If there's a lot of services, it might not display all of them on this page here. You can always click on services, and sometimes that's an easier way to list a whole bunch of services that a client has received. And again, you can just click on that notepad if you need to go in, make any changes to the service, and then hit save. You can also delete a service if the client did not actually receive the service. You got the delete button. And then this also works the same way with the recycle bin, where you can go in and restore that if you need to. Case notes work the same way. If there was a case note here, which we'll add one real quick. You can go in, edit the case note if you want to. Also, you can delete the case note, and you're going to have the recycle bin here as well. If you click on or hover over assessments, you'll actually get shortcuts to all the individual assessments. And if we click on one of those, it's going to show you a list of any assessments that you have access to. These might be assessments from another agency if this client's information has been marked as shared. So this will just list sometimes a good bit of assessments here. You can go in and edit the assessments here. It can be tricky though to know which enrollments these are tied to, which is why we recommend normally going through either edit enrollment workflow or using the option to review entry or review exit assessments, just because this will make sure you're only affecting the assessments that are tied to this particular enrollment. But I did just want to cover briefly that all those assessments you do, they are stored under these menu options here. And if for whatever reason you were to delete these and you needed to restore it, you could in the same way go up to the recycle bin and you could restore any of the individual assessments that way. So that covers all the basic data editing. Hopefully this has been helpful in correcting your data.